Morning.
Morning. Hi, Lisa. Nice to meet you. I'm Ariana.
Hi, Ariana.
So, a lot happened this episode. I just finished it like a half hour ago, and I'm just like, what? But I guess to start off with, what was it like to shoot the shootout between Dublin and the Finn family as a director? Because I'm sure there was a bunch to orchestrate.
It was a big sequence, and so taking that on, once the first thing I did was to storyboard it and to figure out all the different beats and moments that I had to cover and how I wanted to cover it, and then working with the stunt coordinator, working with him to make sure he understood where and how I wanted things done, and what have you, and special effects. And then Jody Williams, our cinematographer, I'm making sure talking and meeting with him. There's lots of moving parts. And so the biggest thing is to communicating to all your various team members of what you need and what I want and how I wanted it done. And the big thing for the Walter death was that I wanted Walter's death to be epic. It needed to be big and Shakespearean. It's a King Lear kind of moment. And so I wanted to make sure that we gave him his just due of his sending off as we sent him off the Power series, right?
Yeah. Why in the moment where he is about to die, he is still so cruel to his son?
There's a moment where he says, well, Walter is Walter. He's a narcissist, right? Mm-hmm. He is a formidable drug king who has done whatever he had to do to be where he wanted to be, right? In that world. But there's a moment where he shows he does love his son. When he's on the ground, he says, my beautiful boy, you have your mother's eyes. And then, still wanting to be in control, he tells Vic, pull the trigger. Pull the fucking trigger, right?
Yes. Why do you think Paulie is still so dedicated to this family? Because Vic kind of gives him the clue of, okay, like, this is not going to end well. And even though Walter has been so cruel to him, he was just fired. He's just like, family is family.
Family is everything 1,000 times over. He said, I would do it for Walter. I'd do it for you. Paulie is the moral compass for this family, right? And I think that Paulie's goodness, even though he's had to do Walter's dirty work, I think he has been the one that he thinks he brings morality to the Flynn family. So Paulie being loyal, Paulie loves Walter. Walter is a very charismatic character, right? And so I think Paulie would do anything for his brother-in-law, right? It's family. And I think that is who Paulie is. He is loyal to a fault, to his own demise, right?
Yeah. And he's literally in like a pool just filled with his blood at the end, but I think he views that as like an honorable death.
Oh, he does. And the way I shot it, I wanted Paulie's death to be sympathetic, empathetic. We're underwater. He hits the water, slow motion. The blood seeps out. He's floating. You see the blood seeping out. It's like an epic, tragic moment to this, this tragic play, Shakespearean play that we're playing out.
Yes. Why don't you think Paulie is so loyal to family? Why don't you think that's really kind of trickled down to the Flynn siblings? Because Claudia, when she's here, that, oh, like, if your brother's alive, and she's just like, oh, I guess he has to be dead then. Like, there's never really a moment of sympathy or like sibling love between them, especially from Claudia.
Yeah, well, from the get-go, I think Claudia, a couple of things. Claudia has always been so brutalized by Walter. He's never, ever shown her due, acknowledged her value to the family, to him as a daughter, to the family business. And so her ambition is blinding her, right? And now she sees, well, once Doyle tells her that Dublin wouldn't work with her, she makes this decision. Like, she is so blinded by, I want it all. She knows that Vic does not want to run this. He's not strong enough to run it. She's the only one that could really keep the Flynn organization going. She's wounded. She is a wounded bird. There's a lot of familial moments in this episode with the Flynn family and their family dynamic. Tommy, Kate, Darnell, right? And their families going on. And you've got Diamond and Jenard with their daddy coming into the picture. So there's a lot of family elements being played out and worked out in this episode as well.
Yeah, that's why it's very interesting about Force is that it is so many family dynamics. And first, in the beginning of the show, you think it's just the Flynns, but there's so many. Speaking of family, Tommy's family in Power, he really had the familiar ties with Ghost and his family, but these are people he is biologically tied to. Yet they're still kind of strangers. They don't really trust each other. They don't really know how to communicate. What was it like to kind of build these scenes of like, we care for each other, but we also don't really trust each other. And also we obviously still have a bone to pick of things that have happened over the decades.
What's lovely about our cast is they're all so enormously talented. And I think that the theme of the familial elements of this episode is longing. And that was where I went, is everyone is longing for a connection. Kate is longing to be the mother she wasn't to Tommy and to JP. And so she's longing to be the grandma to DMAC, and she's doing it, right? Mm-hmm. Diamond, when he shows up to see his father, there's that little boy still longing to reconnect with a daddy he never had. And so when his daddy is still the mean old snake that he was when he was a little boy, it hardens and the anger's got to come out, right? But that longing, I think, is the familial connection. Vic longed for his dad to not be so brutal to him. Claudia longed for her dad to acknowledge her value, right? Tommy longs to belong to somebody. Like we saw it in episode 3 when DMAC and JP and Kate are in the hospital and he's standing by the hospital door looking in. He doesn't get to be a part of that, right? There's a longing. But in order for Tommy to do what his goals are, his goals take over Chicago and the drug trade, it's kind of hard to have a family too.
Yeah, because even when he's talking to DMAC, when luckily he's not dead, he is just at boarding school. Yes, that he is like on the phone and it seems like he's going to say, I love you, but then he just hangs up the phone because it's just like, I can't be too connected in this because I need to think of the game and I also need to protect you.
Yep, all of that. And that was Joseph. Like his nuanced performance there just nailed. You saw that moment of vulnerability where he was like, hey, DMAC, and he catches himself. You know, before that he was hard, Tommy, we're watching you, you screwed up, da-da-da. And then he's vulnerable. And we see a little crack into that. And that's what's so lovely about this multi-layered character that Joseph has created for Tommy. He's such a great character.
Yeah, and it's interesting when DMAC is talking to Kate that even he's starting to sound like Tommy a little bit. He's starting to kind of have like that New York Irish-ish accent. So it's kind of sad when he's like stepping away, but hopefully he comes back. Like there's definitely room open for that. Another scene that like I like physically cringe from is Jenard is so far gone. He even used the terms that a lot of addicts use when they're going through withdrawal and addiction of I'm sick, someone needs to help me. And we see him being shot up for the first time. What was it like to direct that? Because that was honestly just as heartbreaking of the death of Walter.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it truly is that downward spiral of Jenard. A couple of things was really, really wonderful that Sammy, who played the white guy and the guy that was shooting him up, right, is also the co-writer of the script.
Oh.
And Sammy actually is known. I mean, it's common knowledge. Like he's a recovered addict, right? So he is, and so he had so much authenticity that he could bring to this scene. And so it's like going in there and shooting that, and Jenard allowing himself to be so vulnerable, so sick, so needy, so in the desperation of his addiction, and Kris Lofton going there and playing that scene so vulnerable, and Sammy being so willing to help his friend go there, his new friend, because addicts love to shoot up together, right?
Yes.
They love the camaraderie of that. And I thought that moment together of watching Jenard's sickness spiral down, I mean, that is his down moment there, right?
Yeah, it's insane. I always love to ask directors this. Was there a scene that just that for time-wise that you loved, but just wasn't able to make the cut?
There were a little bit of scenes that we had to trim. All the scenes made it in. The one that was about to be cut, and I fought tooth and nail to keep it in, was when Diamond is sitting in the hospital room with his daddy, and Jenard shows up and walks down the hospital hallway and sees them and then stops. He starts getting a buzzing in his head, stops and turns around. And that's when he goes to shoot up. That scene, that moment got cut out of the schedule, I bet 5 times. And I kept fighting to get it back in. I kept saying, I will shoot it so simply. I will but I will shoot it in 1 hour. But that moment to show Jenard making that decision, I can't be part of that family. Diamond can sit there with daddy. I can't do that right now. I can't watch Pop die. Yeah. And he leaves. I fought for that. And it stayed in. There was another scene, like when Tommy comes in and tells JP that D-Mac shot a cop and he's looking for Kate. There was a top half of the scene, about a page of dialogue that was happening before that we had to trim. It was too long, but I think the scene still really works.
Oh, yes. And even you keeping that scene in, it made sense how Diamond kind of lies about what the dad said. Like, oh, you were always the favorite, come back into the family. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. This was amazing. And I hope to talk to you for the penultimate episode that you're directing as well.
Indeed. Give me a call. I'd love to do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.